Well, the name of the new book was changed, and it was called by my editor. She said, "What do you want to do with this name?" So the new book has the current name. As for signing the contract, you don't need to worry about it. This book has already passed, and it's just waiting for a name change, so please collect and recommend tickets. Hey. The sound of heavy breathing rang out in the dark room. Uchiha opened his eyes and looked at the pair of scarlet three-hooked jade riding wheel eyes in the mirror. He couldn't help sighing. Failed again. Although Uchiha, who has failed countless times, was a little disappointed in his heart, he still wrote down some of his own experiences in a notebook. The language he uses is not Japanese, but pure Chinese. He is not from this world. Uchiha Kai was originally an Earth person, but because of some accidents, he came to this world. After he came to this world, after he knew that he belonged to the Uchiha family, he was proud of him for a while, but what happened next really gave him some serious blows. Living in this world, being weak is the original sin. Probably because of the relationship between modern people, Uchiha Kai can't stand the cruelty of this era, and it seems that Uchiha Kai can only be regarded as ordinary in terms of talent. If it weren't for the fact that he was a transmigrator, his natural spiritual power seemed to be stronger than others, and if he reluctantly relied on the riding wheel to survive in danger on the battlefield, his grave grass might have grown several feet tall by now. Sometimes, he really admires the ninjas in this world. Often, they have the ability to kill at the age of 6 or 7. It is common for them to go to the battlefield at the age of 10. Even worse, like Kakashi, at the age of 12, he has already killed countless enemies. The forbearance. Uchiha knew his own situation, so he didn't dare to show his shackles easily since he was a child. Even when he was on the battlefield, he was very careful not to expose his eyes. Without being strong enough to protect himself, Uchiha Kizan didn't think he could survive. At least he had the ability to protect himself if he had a kaleidoscope, right? As for what to do after getting the kaleidoscope, Uchiha Kai didn't think about those things at all, and you can't even get a kaleidoscope. What qualifications do you have to think about other issues? Is it exciting enough? Uchiha Kai couldn't help thinking after recording his feelings this time. Uchiha Kai can be said to be very familiar with the riding wheel eye, and he is naturally very clear about its origin and evolutionary history. To put it simply, this thing is to open the eyes and continuously evolve by strong emotional stimulation. It is not unreasonable for the Uchiha family to be called neurosis by many people. In particular, kaleidoscope requires more intense emotional agitation or even abnormality, and the chakra of the brain stimulates the eyes, thereby opening the eyes. When the eyes are opened, the inner reflection will echo the brain, complete the reorganization and sorting of the chakras in the eyes, and obtain the corresponding abilities. Uchiha Kai wanted to try to open his eyes because he knew this. Compared with the guys from the Hyuga clan next door, the Uchiha clan's eyes are easy to open. If they really crossed into the group of cataracts next door, maybe Uchiha Kai is really dead. You must know that in his memory of his previous life, the genius of the Hyuga clan, Niji Hyuga, was also an inexplicable sad character who died in the end, let alone the other Hinata clansmen. If you don't consider the issue of genocide, where is the problem? Uchiha Chi silently touched his chin. Is the stimulation not deep enough? Or is my illusion technique not good? Or is it that I know all this and subconsciously conclude that the illusion technique is fake? Kai Uchiha was really depressed. He used a special method to cast illusions on himself, and then let himself fall into illusions without knowing it. However, Uchiha Kai has tried many times, and he has not been able to succeed from beginning to end. It is not ineffective, at least his three-hook jade has proved that this method is feasible. Kai Uchiha didn't know if this method only worked for him. Anyway, he had never seen other Uchiha people use this method. However, after using this method to a certain extent using Uchiha Kai, he was unable to cross the last hurdle from beginning to end. In addition, the war outside seems to be coming to an end now. Maybe it is the last madness. Except for the villages that have declared their surrender and armistice, the remaining villages have also started to launch the final madness against Konoha. This time can be said to be the most dangerous. Although Kai Uchiha has survived the previous battle, he really can't guarantee that he can survive the next battle. Has it reached a threshold? Uchiha thought silently while packing his diary before, or, my mental power has already produced antibodies? No, there is no such thing as white blood cells in mental power. Kai Uchiha couldn't figure out these things. The only thing that could be foreseen was that the days in the future would never be calm. It has been Konoha's 47th year now, and there is still 1 year left before the 4th Hokage will take the throne. And now it should be the most troublesome level of the war, right? The Battle of Jujin Mountain has ended. Uyukanshu www.uyuganshu.com Shane Village was defeated and surrendered. Now there is only one opponent left in Konoha Village, Union Village. I have to thank some Iwayan village for some magical operations. If they hadn't made a sneak attack on Yun Ninja from behind, the 3 generations of Reikage had to fight against tens of thousands of IWA ninja alone in order to let their companions escape, insisting on fighting for 3 days and 3 nights. Exhausted operation. I am afraid that Konoha will face the 2 sides of Yunin and Iwanan at the same time, but it is precisely because they are maximizing their profits, and the normal frontal Namikaze Minato alone drags down the 4 generations of Reikage brothers. Otherwise, the trouble for Konoha village will be even greater now, because neither Yun Ninja nor IWA Ninja are easy characters to deal with. In the Battle of Shinryukun, Kakashi will also get Obito's Shaker to become a copy ninja. After arranging all the logs, Uchiha made a seal to seal them all in the scroll, and then put them all away solemnly. There are still many similarities between Japanese and Chinese. If this thing is lost to Uchiha Kai, the trouble will be really big. In order to prevent his memory loss, he wrote all the Naruto plots he could think of on it. The advantage of this is that Kai can know roughly what happened at any time, so as to avoid disasters or gain some benefits. After doing all this, Uchiha Chi sighed, Sanguyu's writing wheel eyes are really not enough to see. Without a kaleidoscope, how will you face those guys who are beyond the limits of ordinary people in the future? Not to mention them, the Uchiha genocide a few years later is enough to give Uchiha a headache. You have to think of a way, otherwise the future will be killed by Uchiha Itachi. Early the next morning, Uchiha Kai did some simple training and walked towards the gathering place. In times of war, any ninja is a resource for fighting. Even big families like Uchiha and Hinata must fight to protect the village. Of course, there are policies above and below. For example, the Hyuga clan sent out to fight are basically members of the branch. With the protection of the caged bird, they don't need to worry about their white eyes being taken away by others, especially when a member of the clan was killed in the face of Kirin, and a white eye was gouged out. The people of the Uchiha clan are not stupid. Although the ninjas they will send also have members who have opened Sharingan, the areas they go to are all relatively safe places. And the members who didn't turn on the writing wheel will completely obey the village's mobilization and go to the place where the village needs them to go. Uchiha Kai is the type that obeys the village's mobilization. The main reason is that Uchiha Kai really has never shown his writing wheel in front of anyone. Uchiha Kai would rather hang on until he doesn't feel safe enough. Although war is dangerous, it's better than being on Konoha's blacklist. There are advantages and disadvantages to doing this. The disadvantage is that Uchiha Kai is very dangerous, but the advantage is that his guidance, joining Kai, is a person that Konoha trusts. Just like Obito, the trash of the Uchiha clan, he has a Sharingan mentor like Feng Minato. Uchiha Kai and Uchiha Obito are in the same class, but Uchiha Kai's luck is not as good as this guy Obito. His guide, Hunin, is not a famous person, let alone any one of the pigs, deer, and butterflies. He is just a Jainin who is completely loyal to the Hokage family, and his name is Fuju Hangping. And it's not the Hunin that Uchiha Kai originally delivered. His first guide, Hunin, had already sacrificed heroically in a mission to cover the team. As for Uchiha Kai's teammates, they are also a bunch of tricks. There is no Mike K, no Red, and no Asuma or Shiranui Genma. His teammate is a civilian ninja named Ime Kenta. He is a ninja with very strong physical skills, and a very smart guy who has lived from the beginning of the war to the present. The other one is more interesting. Her name is Hyuga Aya. Just like her name, she is a member of the Hyuga family branch. And she is also very smart, and it can even be said that she is a very scheming woman. Kei Uchiha and his teammates have an average relationship. They are not very good, but they don't have too many hatreds. The fact that they are together is the result of the constant change of teams. And they also performed a lot of tasks together, and it was precisely because of these tasks that Kei Uchiha noticed their scheming and some obscure thoughts. During the war, ninjas suffered a lot of casualties. Even Uchiha and his teammates died several times. The same is true for the two of them. To put it bluntly, the three are old silver coins, otherwise it would be impossible to live to the present. Why is it so slow? Is the Uchiha family like this? When Uchiha Kai walked to the gathering place, he found that everyone else was already there, and Hyuga Aya looked at him with a frown. We are going on a mission. Mission? Uchiha Chi nodded calmly, but soon he looked around strangely. Where's Tomohisa Hangping? Why are there only 3 of us? Sitting aside, Kenta Ime, who was wiping his knives by himself, raised his head and said, the captain followed the other joinin to the front line half an hour ago. Iwanen's offensive is very ferocious, and we have a separate mission. The Battle of Kaikyoyama was very tragic, especially since Konoha had just dealt with the Sand Ninja, and there was no rest at all. Killing 10,000 enemies, self-destructing 3,000, Konoha's strength has been severely depleted. At this time, Rock Country is obviously trying to take advantage of the fire. However, it was precisely because they had such thoughts that they also attacked Raikage. I am afraid Konoha really won't be able to hold on. Although according to the official explanation, the squad led by Minato destroyed Konobe Bridge and completely cut off the enemy's backup supply line. But Uchiha Kei felt that being attacked on both sides was also the reason why Iwanen couldn't stand it. After all, he had to face Konoha in the front and Yunin behind him, so no one could stand it. What is our mission? Uchiha Kei nodded. Also, who is the captain? It's you. Hyuga Aya seemed a little dissatisfied, but she said seriously, our task is to cover the Kaminami Feng Minato class and let them complete the task. During the war, the ninjas in various countries were largely militarized, and their quality was much better than in the comics. It's just that Aya Hyuga's words made Kei Uchiha frown. This mission is to use them as bait. They didn't tell them Minato's mission, they just asked them to cover Minato's mission. Although Ime Kenta and Hyuga Aya knew that this was a decoy mission, they had absolutely no idea what Minatoban was going to do. But Kei Uchiha knows, this class's mission is to blow up the Kamobi Bridge. This also means that the 3 of them are simply going to die to attract firepower. Think about the fact that in the original book, Kakashi and the others did not encounter many enemies at all. Just imagine such an important strategic position, why is there no heavy guard? Even if what Kakashi and the others have to do is sneak in, but it can't be just 1 or 2 people, right? Then it was obvious that someone else attracted their attention, which led to Kakashi and the others sneaking in smoothly. Thinking of this, Uchiha Chi frowned. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. This is not a good task, but he remembers that after Obito died, a bunch of rock ninjas appeared. That does not mean that these attracted people are basically finished already? Especially Uchiha Kai remembered that Obito was taken away by Uchiha Madara because of this mission. In other words, in fact, near the Kamabashi Bridge, there is actually a stronghold of Uchiha, the Immortal. However, Uchiha Kei doesn't think he has the ability to refuse this task. Being a deserter in wartime is no better than losing his life on the battlefield, or even worse. There are a few more groups that cooperate with them in their mission. Uchiha thought for a while and asked, "How far are we going to go?" "There are also 6 groups that cooperate with their mission." Hyagaiya replied quickly, "As for how deep it is, we don't know, what we have to do is to attract the enemy, and then contain the enemy." What a tedious task! Uchiha cursed inwardly, but soon he cheered up. Since there are still 6 groups of people, they still have a chance in general. Although this is entirely a matter of luck, Uchiha, who has always been hidden, feels that he is not unable to survive. With so many experiences, Uchiha felt that as long as he was careful enough, he would have no chance. "Then, let's go." Thinking of this, Uchiha waved his hand and rushed out of the gate. Since it is a task, naturally it cannot be delayed. Kenta and Hinata quickly followed. They didn't have much time, so they had to speed up. It's just that when they were about to leave the village, they happened to see the team of Minato Nami Feng, and they seemed to be preparing to leave the village. Chi ignored them and left the village quickly without even saying hello. It's not that Uchiha has any dissatisfaction with Minato, Kakashi, and others. On the contrary, Uchiha still likes them, but because of this task, he really can't be happy. Kenta and Hyagaiya were similar. After taking a look at the 4 of them, they quickly followed Uchiha and ran out. To attract Iwa Shinobu's attention, it is natural to separate from Minato and his team, otherwise, Uchiha and his team will be affecting the mission. He quickly ran out of Konoha village and walked towards the mission. The sun shone through the dense branches and leaves of the towering trees, casting mottled shadows on the ground. Between the big tree and its shadow, 3 small figures galloped past the branches of the big tree, dragging out afterimages. In this dim light, this small afterimage is almost invisible. Even the most sensitive birds in the dense forest do not notice it. Before setting off, Uchiha had already thought of a strategy, that is to quickly reach the mission location and hide. There are members of the Hyuga clan in their team, which gives Uchiha a lot of convenience. At least they can detect the enemy's situation first and make up their minds. But Uchiha also knew how troublesome this task was. He couldn't refuse, but he didn't want to die, so he had to think of other ways. It took about 3 days for the 3 of them to finally cross the border and enter the Kusanagi village, but they did not join the main force under the leadership of Uchiha. This decision made Kenta and Hinata very puzzled, but as wartime ninjas, they could only obey the captain's orders. "Let's rest for a while." After entering a certain forest in Kusanagi village, Uchiha stopped and sat down first to recover his strength. Now they are at their best when they have to, in order to deal with the possible battle at any time. White eyes, open. There was no need for Kai's physique at all. Hyagaiya opened her eyes to observe the situation around her. She also knew their current situation, and for the sake of her own life, she didn't dare to be careless. There is no danger. After checking for a while, Hyagaiya closed her eyes and whispered, "Yet." Uchiha nodded, and then continued, "Now that we have reached the country of grass, we are about to enter the mission target area. Now is the time to discuss the next policy. Do you want to survive or not?" Kenta and Hyagaiya were stunned when they heard Uchiha's words. They didn't expect Uchiha to raise this question so recklessly. After the 2 of them looked at Uchiha, they both wisely chose to remain silent. The ninjas who can come out of the ninja academy and go to the battlefield are not fools. With the wisdom of the 2 of them, of course, they understood what the purpose of the mission given to them by the village was, to let them be the cannon fodder to restrain and defend Iwanan. In fact, there are many ways to save one's life. The best way is to wander along the border between the land of fire and the land of grass, making small fights until the end of the war. I believe they both understand this. But they can only think like this. They can even do it, but they can't say it outright. This is politics. And Uchiha asked so bluntly that it suddenly blocked the way for both of them. After all, once they said such an idea, it would mean that their future was over. Uchiha K didn't open his mouth and just looked at them with a half-smiling smile. How could he not have thought of what the two of them thought? He didn't know how many methods he thought of along the way, but he rejected all of them. These two people can do nothing on the border until the end of the war, but Uchiha, who is the captain, can't. If it was like this until the end, Uchiha Kai would definitely be ruined when he returned to the village, and he would even be charged with delaying the fighter plane. Even if Uchiha knew very well that even if he didn't do it, Iwa Shinobu would definitely not be able to hold it for long, but other people don't necessarily think that way. Konoha executives always need a brilliant image, but in fact their orders ruined a lot of ninjas. For this reason, high-level officials will naturally try their best to divert people's attention and divert contradictions. The more common practice is to find some scapegoats to take responsibility, or to find some unlucky guys to bear the infamy of being a coward, killing a comrade in arms, etc. Or use someone's exploits to attract people's attention, and the deceased will naturally become the existence of contributing to the village. Uchiha Kama wanted to say and act like that, and the final result was naturally that he helped the top officials of Konoha completely. Anyway, they were not happy with the Uchiha clan. Uchiha wouldn't do this kind of thing, and naturally he couldn't let his teammates think that way, much less let them do it. No matter what they think about it or not, Uchiha Kai wants to put an end to some things, and no one wants to die, but Uchiha Kai doesn't want to be a scapegoat. What's the matter, you two? You don't need to think about this simple question for so long, right? Uchiha Kai leaned his back against a big tree and sneered. At the same time, his hand on the back had already touched the ninja bag, ready to start. To be honest, the silver coin of Uchiha Chi still hopes that they will express their thoughts. As far as his current strength is concerned, he can kill one of them at some cost. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com and then run away. Although Uchiha didn't think they dared to speak out and dare not do anything, the cautious Uchiha had to plan for the worst. After a long time, Ime Kenta and Hyagaiya looked at each other, and Hyagaiya gritted her teeth and said, "Captain, I think you should know what this mission means, right?" "Of course I do." Uchiha Kai looked at the two with a half-smile, "So, I'm going to ask you what you mean." "We're going to complete our mission." Ime Kenta smiled harmlessly, "But I think we should be more careful, and then play to our advantage of being blind." "Oh? That's a good idea." Uchiha Kai put down his guard and said unconcernedly. Sure enough, they didn't dare to take action, because they directly betrayed Konoha, which was far more terrifying than their actual thoughts. And they also know that this guy Uchiha Kai can live to this day, he definitely has his own ability. The three of them are all the same, the teammates have changed one after another, but all three of them are still alive, which naturally explains a lot of reasons. It's just that this time the three of them sighed in their hearts, "I'm in trouble, I met the same character." With 3 silver coins together, it is really a comparison to see who is more ruthless and whose desire to survive is stronger. In this case, then we will find a suitable position by ourselves, and then do what we need to do. Uchiha Kai chuckled and said, "Kentakin is right. If you have white eyes, you should use them well. We will first arrive at the expected location and then ask Ayakan." "No problem, but after that, find a place with few people and we will attack. There are other teams anyway, right? Probably everyone hates guys of the same type as themselves, and the 3 of them, Uchiha, Hyagawa, and Kenta Ime are no exception." They didn't communicate much along the way, even Uchiha Kai felt that these two really wanted to tear him apart, right? However, Uchiha Kai wasn't frightened. If these two guys dared to do something, maybe Uchiha Kai would be happy. It's so easy, maybe he's not very good at other things, but he still has some experience on running away. Uchiha's other abilities may be a bit average, but there is one technique he masters very well, that is the instant body technique. In the real fight, Uchiha Kai can completely turn on the writing wheel and perform the telekinesis technique to kill one person, then turn his head and run away. It doesn't matter what kind of mission this is, and incidentally, they can be sentenced to betray Ninja Village. When the time comes, let the people of the Zhongshan family check what happened, then Uchiha Kai can guarantee that he can pass the test. But unfortunately, these two seem to understand very well, and they don't have any such thoughts at all. The three of them walked all the way, when Ime Kenta suddenly stopped and made a "there is a situation" gesture. Ime Kenta has a good sense of perception. As a taijutsu ninja, especially a taijutsu ninja with superb swordsmanship, his sense of smell is indeed very strong. Hyuga Aya immediately opened her white eyes and began to observe. The veins around her eyes burst out, a little less hazy and a little more hideous than in the comics. 6. Hyuga Aya lip-mouthed Kai and the others. 6. Then it should be at least 2 squads. In the war, for various reasons, it is very normal for the number of squads to be less than full. But this is a good thing, at least you don't need to face 2 full-scale teams. The only thing I don't know now is whether there is a shinin in it. Kai Uchiha, Aya Hyuga and Kenta Ime are not jounin, they are not the ninjas that Kakashi became jounin at the age of 12. Of course, they weren't the genin of Konoha's strongest fighting power, but the 3 chunin. Uchiha Chi thought for a while, the 6 people are not good candidates, at least their forehead guards will be a good trophy for Kai. Thinking of this, Uchiha Kai made a gesture to the 2 people beside him, and then the 3 of them each dodged and disappeared on the top of the tree. Uchiha Chi hid in a dwarf tree. At the same time, he also opened the writing wheel, and 3 black guyus slowly rotated on the scarlet pupils. Aya Hyuga and Kenta Ime have no time to take care of others now, which allows Kai Uchiha to use their abilities unscrupulously, and soon several figures of chakra flow appeared in Kai's eyes. Because it was a hasty encounter, they didn't have time to set up any traps, otherwise they would probably be more relaxed. Taking a deep breath, Chi had already observed the current situation. The opponent only has 1 Jainin, which is good news, but they also have 2 Chunin and 3 lower ninjas, which is not a fighting force worth ignoring. The world of Hokage is very strange, even if it is as strong as Madara Uchiha, it can still be killed by shadows. Take a look at Heiju, who talks to Madara Uchiha, and Naruto, who uses seduction to confuse Kaguya. Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Chi took out a handful of kunao, but he didn't dare to do it lightly. God knows if his 2 teammates turned their heads and ran away after he made his move. The most interesting thing is that his 2 teammates also seemed to be guarding against this. They also stayed in place quietly, motionless, and watched the 6 Iwanin walk past them. Damn it! Uchiha Kai scolded, without Fuju Hangping's guidance, they really brought their distrust to the extreme. Fire escape, Fire Phoenix Immortal Technique. Thinking of this, Uchiha Kai was not polite, he immediately released a ninjutsu against the 6 rock ninjas, and luckily, the area covered by this ninjutsu was where Ime Kenta was hiding. After doing all this, Uchiha Chi immediately cast a shadow clone and then the main body used another clone technique. He stood firmly on the top of the tree and watched everything below making a decision. Ime Kenta really couldn't stand it anymore, and he greeted Kai Uchiha in the most vicious language, and this guy jumped out immediately. He drew his sword, swung it, then turned to dodge, a set of actions that flowed smoothly, but Iwanin's slow reaction was directly killed by him. The most important thing is that Uchiha Kai, who was hiding and observing, found that this kid is not a kind person. The spot where he turned to dodge happened to be where Aya Hyuga was hiding. Although Iwa Shinobu was a little flustered by the sneak attack, they quickly calmed down. With a large amount of kunao shooting out, plus Ime Kenta turned around and ran away, Hyuga Aya could no longer hide, she could only jump out fiercely with her teeth clenched. 2 little devils! Yanin's Jainin sneered when he saw this scene, you're so brave, kill them. In fact, there is no need for this Iwanin Hunin's order at all. The other Iwanan, Chunin, and Shimanen have already drawn their weapons and attacked them. And this IWA ninja Hunin is not at all careless. There are 4 people in a team. Now there are only 2 people here. Considering the factor of team loss, then this means that at least one person has not appeared. Now he can't just shoot, at least until he catches the last guy talking. And at this moment, he suddenly had a very bad sense of danger in his heart, and the cold feeling made him stand upside down. Quick, unbelievably quick. The touch told him that his clothes were torn, and even his back was cut open by Kyuuji. Between the electric light and flint, this Iwanan Hunin immediately formed a seal, and the substitute technique was activated instantly. In the most dangerous times, the simplest ninjutsu is often the most effective. As a Jainin, it is impossible for him not to know this kind of thing. In the process of the substitute technique, this Jainin Yuguang glanced at the position he had just now, and there stood this young man, a young man with scarlet eyes. Right around eye. The Uchiha family? This Hunin is not a fool, he immediately judged who he was facing. But what makes him miserable is that in the face of Uchiha, even if it's a kid, it's best not to fight with one person, 2 people are the best choice. Now everyone else is caught up in their own battles, he is indeed a Jounin, but he was just a special Jounin a few days ago. Suddenly, the eyes of this IWA shinobi Jainin widened again, because the scar-leaded Uchiha kid disappeared again, and this time he felt a coolness coming from his neck. So fast! The kunao in his hand slid lightly across the throat of the Jainin in front of him, and the force was neither too light nor too heavy to be fatal. Uchiha Kai was quite proficient in this technique. After all, he has been here for so many years, and Uchiha Kai has been on the battlefield for so many years. Although according to the modern thinking, he is still not used to it, but he also has a somewhat calm mentality that matches it. Under the psychological suggestion and hypnosis of Uchiha Kai himself, killing them now is like fighting monsters and leveling up when playing games in a previous life, not without any mental burden, but at least it will be much less. The world of ninjas is like this. Either you die or I die. Uchiha Kai has been forcing himself to adapt to all this. This Jainin's ability is average, or it is not comprehensive. Although he is prepared to face key surprise attack, Naihi key speed is too fast. However, Uchiha Chi has no pride at all. He knows what his talent is, and he is not fast at learning anything. Even if he has a writing wheel, he only reaches the normal level of genius. Also, don't look at the speed of Kai's speed, but Kai knows that even if Minato Namakai doesn't use the Thunder God's technique, I'm afraid that his telekinesis is the best in the ninja world, right? Not to mention this pervert, there is Uchiha Shisui among the descendants of the Uchiha clan, and it is conceivable how fast his telekinesis is if he will be able to create a name for the instant body in the future. Of course, Uchiha Kai thinks that his kaleidoscope writing wheel has also played a lot of roles here, right? Turning his head, Kai looked at the current battle situation, and saw Kenta Ime, after dodging for a while, suddenly accelerated and rushed towards a Chunin. The speed is astounding, like a streamer, and the Chunin seems to be unable to adapt to this guy's speed at all. The Chunin who faced Ime Kenta's thunderous blow had no time to dodge, so he had to raise his hand and prepare to take it hard with the kunao in his hand. And when the sword and kunao were about to meet, Ime Kenta's hand moved slightly, the sword in his hand bypassed kunao as if alive, and wiped the guy's throat. Figures pass by, and a blood-colored red flower blooms in the air. This knife is neat and tidy. On the other side, Hyagaya was fighting with the same guy, and 2 vague figures were running around in the woods. With her white eyes and soft boxing, even facing the shinin, there is not necessarily any problem, at least it can last for a long time, not to mention it is a chunin. Sure enough, after a fight, Hyagaya caught a flaw in the opponent and immediately slapped it out. That one immediately vomited blood and hit the back like a bullet, and didn't stop until it broke a big tree. At this point, the battle is almost over. 1 Jainin and 2 Chunin have been resolved. Besides, Kenta Ime was killed by Kian in advance. Now there are only 2 left, and they are dumbfounded and shivering as they hold kunao in their hands. When Uchiha Kai saw this scene, he seemed to see himself who had just stepped onto the battlefield a few years ago. Although he had some pity in his heart, he knew better that these were all bullshit. Cleaning the battlefield, the smell of blood is too strong. He sighed inwardly, but on the surface Uchiha was still very calm. Also, please be more decisive next time. Yes, Captain. Ime Kenta once again showed a harmless smile. He seemed to have completely forgotten that he had been shattered by the guy in front of him before. Humph. On the other hand, Ayahayaga snorted coldly, staring blankly at Kai Uchiha. Kiken's strength is really beyond imagination, even if you don't turn on the riding wheel, compared to such a fast teleportation technique. He'll be a great ninja. Ha, Sharingan is a good thing, even if you don't belong to the Uchiha family, you will want it. Uchiha Chi didn't care about the yin and yang of Hayagaya at all, and then teased, but compared to this, I feel more free. Important. Right? Ayakin. In terms of yin and yang, Uchiha Chi is not afraid of anyone, not to mention that what this woman said has no lethal power to Uchiha. It's not that Uchiha didn't have a will eye, but he didn't want to be too ostentatious, and freedom was a fatal blow to a member of the Hayaga clan. As expected, Ayahayaga's face darkened, and even chakra ripples appeared on her slender hands. What's the use of pretending? If you really want to beat you won't even open your eyes. Uchiha Kai didn't take this set at all, and he even showed some smiles. Sorry, I'm so blunt. I should probably express my opinion in a veiled way. Captain, Ayakan, how do you deal with these 2? Just when Hayagaya's eyes became more dangerous, Ime Kenta touched his head and interrupted the 2 of them. These 2 are genin, but I think you can ask, can you provide some information? Humph, kill these 2. Hayagaya withdrew her chakra and glanced coldly at the 2 IWA ninja, who had been completely frightened, that Chunin is not dead yet, rather than asking about this. It's better to find the Chunin than the 2 genin. Now is the time to see Kaijun's illusion, so don't let us down. Saying that, when Hayagaya walked over to the 2 genin and didn't give them any reaction at all, she patted their chests with 2 palms. Uchiha Kai didn't need to look at it to know that the 2 gents were dead, and the woman seemed to have vented all her grievances against Uchiha on the 2 gents. Yu reading www.yuuganshu.com. Uchiha Chi has nothing to say about this, anyway, it has nothing to do with him. Went to the Chunin side, and sure enough, this guy didn't die, but this guy's condition wasn't much better. In reality, Chunin is not as useless as in the comics. Even if it is a Jounin who wants to kill a Chunin who does not faint by himself, it will take time. However, it is a pity that this Chunin encountered a blood-stained ninja like Ayahayaga, and blood-stained ninjas cannot be inferred by common sense. In addition, the teammates of this Chunin have died one after another, and even their Jainin has been wiped by Uchiha Kai. What kind of fighting power does he still have? After checking a little, Uchiha Kai basically determined that this guy might not be able to wake up so quickly, so they would naturally take this guy on the road. Thinking of this, Uchiha Kai stood up and looked at Ime Kenta. Ken taken, this guy is handed over to you. He won't wake up for a while, so let's take him away. Uchiha Kai said. This, well, I understand. Ime Kenta hesitated for a moment, then immediately showed his trademark smirk. Also, Ayakan, please find a cave, we can take a good rest. Seeing Ime Kenta's appearance, Uchiha Kai turned his attention to Hinata Aya. Humph, just leave it to me. Hayagaya Aya snorted coldly but nodded, but she was a little puzzled. Then what are you doing? Me? Of course I have to think hard about the next strategy. And I also need to rest. Don't forget that I killed the one who took office. As a member of Uchiha, being in charge of the interrogation naturally fell on Kai. The characteristics of the Uchiha family make everyone have a fixed understanding, that is, people of their family are very good at illusion. This understanding is wrong, but it is also deeply rooted. Not every member of Uchiha is good at illusion. It is the same even if the Sharingan is turned on. It can only be said that Uchiha, who has Sharingan, can avoid illusions to a certain extent, and can perform illusions more conveniently. Uchiha Kai's torture was calm. Although this guy is very strong-willed, Kai's illusion is not so unsightly. In addition, he was seriously injured by Ayahayaga, and he was in a trance, and Kai didn't mind using some small tricks during the interrogation process. So it took about a day for Uchiha Kai to get the information he wanted, and he also got a very interesting information by accident. There is a team that is transporting Konoha's prisoners of war to the rear of Iwa Shinobi. Uchiha Chi would not embarrass himself alone, he directly passed the news to the other two, but he did not say it all at once. Finish. The world of Naruto is a very interesting world. In the more than 10 years he has lived in Uchiha, all he has felt is some negative things, such as Hatake Shigeru who committed suicide a few years ago. But when he watched this play, he was full of positive energy everywhere, the concept of bond was emphasized throughout, and the theme of companies are more important than tasks was talked about everywhere. But what about actually? Companions are really important during the war, because these companions are likely to be an important part of helping you stop Kunao and ninjutsu. History is written by the victors, Uchiha can't get it wrong, he certainly knows why Hatake Shigeru has provoked public anger. Because it was during the war, if there was no such thing as Chudame and Madara Uchiha who suppressed the existence of the entire ninja world by themselves, the power of the individual would have been brought down to the smallest point. It can be said that Shigeru Hatake had the right idea, but he was born in the wrong era, and it is very likely that Danzo was behind the scenes, which caused Konoha to lose a top combat power. But I have to say that his death also gave Konoha Ninja a wake-up call. Don't think too much, if the mission fails because of your distractions, then you will die. The village is gone, what else is there to say? And Naruto's era was different. They were in peace and naturally had to change some educational policies. Without ordinary war, the importance of natural companions increased. To put it bluntly, it is a means of tying you in the village. If you have enough fetters in this village, would you still think about defecting? If it's normal, Uchiha K would not ignore these people at all, and whether he is dead or alive, he himself is working hard to survive, where is the time to pay attention to other people? But even in the future, he knew that the war would end this year, and it was a change of thinking for the 3 generations to let Neikaze Minato take office. Because Namikaze Minato is a person who agrees with Hatake Sumo, he is also Kakashi's guide to Joinin, otherwise Kakashi and Obito will do what Kakashi and Obito do, even if the war is won, they will be thrown into prison to wait for trial. Captain, don't you want to save people? Ayahayaga looked at Kai Uchiha with a sneer, don't forget our mission, or are you planning to be the second Hatake Suguru? We followed them into the enemy's rear. Uchiha Chi said calmly, maybe we can get more information with them. You are really unreasonable. The mockery on Hayagaya's face became more obvious, are you going to take us to death? Are you going back to Konoha prison to wait for the trial? No, do you think it's possible? Uchiha Kai shook his head, I don't want to say more about some things, but we've been able to live so far has explained a lot of problems. I want to go back alive, and so do you, so we'd better be good cooperation, you know. Ayahayaga shut up, and even Kenta Ime, who was sitting on the side with a harmless face, turned her head and looked over. That's right, the 3 of them are grasshoppers on a rope, and the 3 of them are all the same kind of person, so some words can't be said too clearly. It's just that they didn't know that after Uchiha Kai knew this information, some small things appeared in his heart, such as the idea of making some political investments for the future. Of course, the political investment requires Uchiha to come back alive, otherwise everything will be false. Tell me what you think. Hyagaya found a random place to sit down, and then shot a kunao at the half-dead Iwanan Chunin. If you want to attack the rear, then I want to say I rejected because I didn't live enough. I'm not that stupid, I'm only 13 years old. Uchiha Chi shook his head. Iwanan escorted the prisoners to the rear, but according to the information of the guy you killed, they actually have some other places. A ninja holding some Konoha. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Isn't this normal? Hyagaya put her hands around her chest. It's the most stupid way to lock up all the Konoha ninjas, and Iwanan is not good at sealing. Just halfway through the words, Hyagaya shut up. She glanced at Kei Uchiha vigilantly and then fell into deep thought. Kenta Ime, who had been quiet all the time, also tilted her head and stopped smirking. Konoha ninjas were detained separately to avoid accidents, and these ninjas were constantly tortured and tortured. But at present, Iwanan and Konoha are working the frontal battlefield, so there are not many people guarding them, and even some ordinary Shinwan are responsible for the task of clearing the field. Of course, it is impossible for them to clear all of them. They may deal with some tricky guys, and the rest will be concentrated and sent to the rear to negotiate or exchange with Konoha in the future. But now the key question is, it is unclear whether these guys have been gathered, but since Uchiha Kai raised this question, it means that the Chunin of Iwanan definitely gave some information. How much time do we have? Hyagaya asked, and what is this guy's identity? One of the captive guard ninjas, who received orders the day before yesterday to go to the front line, and met us yesterday. Uchiha Kai said with a smile. You really? This is indeed a good way. Hyagaya hesitated, but she nodded quickly. 2 days ago, if the speed is fast enough, it can indeed save a lot of people. Then let's go. Ime Kenta once again showed a harmless smile. Rescue our companions and complete our mission. Under the eruption of fire done, that Iwanan Chunin was completely reduced to ashes. The three of Uchiha Kai also set off quickly, and they now have a clearer goal. However, when Uchiha Kai looked at these two people, he was not so happy in his heart. These two guys were so smart that he really couldn't stand it. It's a pity that Kai really needs their strength, and he really can't do these things alone. Although Kai guesses that the ninja currently in charge of guarding is likely to be a genin, but God knows if there will be a Shangin who did not go to the front line, or guard the rear. Uchiha's idea is very simple. Knowing the future trend, he is naturally willing to make some small investments without affecting himself. As for saving people, in fact, it is just to complete the task better. These captive ninjas don't need to think about what happened to them. They are full of resentment towards IWA Shinobi, and it is not even ruled out that some guys are already full of fear for IWA Shinobi. But no matter what, if they are still alive, it means that they have not confessed. Don't think that if you confess, you can live. On the contrary, those who lose their use value are often the objects that will be cleaned up first. The logistics, support, and guarantees of the Tulan War will take time to complete, and Iwanan will not hand these things over to some worthless rebels. Of course, these are all speculations by Kai Uchiha, but he won't feel that he guessed these things wrong. There are things like illusions, there is really no need to keep cover up these messy things. Those who are still alive are just because their will is relatively firm, and they have not been tortured by illusion and torture to speak. The purpose of Uchiha Kai and the others is very simple, that is, to rescue these guys and use their hatred for IWA Shinobi to complete their mission. I have to say that this move is really shameless. Hatred is something that can sometimes go to the head, even if they are weak. It is not difficult for them to cause chaos in the rear of the rock ninja. As for how many of them will survive, this is not what Uchiha Kai and the others know. Uchiha Kai and the others only need to be responsible for rescuing these people, and then reveal a little about their own tasks. These guys are likely to find a way to get involved and provide some help. Even if they don't want to help, Uchiha Kai can miss and let an Iwanan run away and send some information out. In this case, I am afraid that the entire rear of Iwanan will be attracted to the attention, so as to achieve the requirements of the Minato team to complete the task. But these things really can't be said, it's a deadly thing to say. However, both Aya Hinata and Kenta Ime quickly realized Kai's thoughts. It has to be said that these two people have some uncompromising means to survive, and their brains are indeed useful enough. It just makes Uchiha puzzled, why is there no name for such an IQ in the original book? After thinking about it, Kei Uchiha thought that it was probably because of this mission that they lost their people, or they simply became rebels. The chances of surviving such a mission are indeed a little small. No matter whether Minato Namikaze and the others succeed in their mission, these guys who attract hatred are 100% cannon fodder. Needless to say, if they fail, these cannon fodders will naturally continue to complete their mission, which is an unspoken rule. And it's even worse if they succeed, because these cannon fodder have to face Iwanan's craziest revenge. No matter how you look at it, it's a mortal situation. As for betrayal, it would be much simpler: slash a knife on one's forehead and then leave the battlefield, leave the disputes between the 5 great nations and find a small corner to hide. Although there is no way to make a figure in this strife of ninja world, but at least they all survived, right? In Uchiha Kai's view, being alive is more important than anything else, and Kai doesn't mind doing it if he really gets to that point. Anyway, it's all dead, so it's not bad to survive if you fight, not to mention that he hasn't forgotten that Uchiha will be exterminated in the future. The 3 of them advanced all the way, and after 2 days of advancing carefully, they met the group of Konoha ninjas who were escorted back to the rear of Iwanan. At this time, Kai Uchiha and the others can be considered to have entered the rear of IWA shinobi, and they can often encounter some patrolling IWA shinobi in this place. The woman in charge of the investigation is still Aya Hayaga. If it wasn't for this woman, they would have really collided with some Iwanan. There are 4 people in charge of the guards, a complete team. Hayaga Aya opened her eyes to observe and said, there are 6 ninjas on Konoha's side, but their situation is a bit bad. It's a matter of course. Uchiha Ki nodded, and then continued to ask, it's nearby, where is the nearest support point? It's 3 or 4 kilometers away from here, and the direction of movement is in the opposite direction. If we act fast enough, we should be able to rescue them. Aya Hayaga closed her eyes and turned to Kai Uchiha. Captain, maybe we can go around to their front. Ime Kenta also said with a smile, setting some traps or something, such as detonating charms, may have miraculous effects. It is normal for ninjas to set up traps, especially the team that escorts the prisoners is very slow. They have every opportunity to set up some traps after judging the opponent's path forward, which is really not difficult for them. And Ime Kenta's suggestion is also very consistent with Uchiha Kai's idea, although some detonation charms will cause movement and attract the enemy to come. But this is also what they need the most, otherwise Aya Hayaga wouldn't stop mentioning things like quiet handling. It's too conspicuous. But after thinking about it carefully, Kei Uchiha shook his head and said, our mission is to rescue, not attract a large number of enemies. Speaking of which, Uchiha paused for a while, and then continued, set up some traps. When they step into the traps, the 2 of you will attack from the flanks, and I will use the fire to put pressure on them, understand? Understood, Captain. Talking to a smart person is easy. These 2 guys immediately knew what Uchiha Kai was thinking, nodded, and they immediately acted. The detonator is indeed a good thing, but many things can't stand investigation, and some more conventional means will be more effective. It didn't take long for the 3 of them to set up a simple trap. At the same time, the 3 of them also quietly hid in 3 directions in the forest, quietly waiting for the prey to take the bait. Quietly lurking above a tall tree, Uchiha Kai quietly opened his riding wheel to observe the surrounding situation. Aya Hayaga and Ken Ime were already in place too early, and neither of them looked in Kai's direction, which made Kai open up the courage to use his own riding wheel. Observing the subtle chakra fluctuations in the forest, Uchiha Kai is also thinking about the countermeasures in the future. Although he has made certain arrangements, it is indeed worth thinking about how to implement it. It was his idea to give up the use of the detonator, because the vibration caused by the use of the detonator would put them in a very disadvantageous position. Although the tasks received by Kai Uchiha and the others have strong mutual assistance, it does not meet the real purpose of Kai Uchiha and the others who want to survive. Then, in order to achieve the goal and attract the attention of the enemy, the best way to replace it is naturally fire escape. It's just that the size and coverage of this fire escape are subject to discussion. If it is too large, it will become a bright light in the dark night, and Uchiha Kai and the others will be in danger. But if it's too small, it won't be enough to attract enough Iwanin to pay attention to this piece, and it won't be convenient for Uchiha Kai and the others. But unfortunately, time waits for no one. Just when Kai Uchiha was still thinking about it, this group of Iwanin took a group of Konoha's captives into their ambush circle. At this time, it was no longer for Uchiha Kaida to think about it. Looking at the rock ninjas who stepped into the ambush circle, Uchiha Kai immediately closed his own riding wheel. This time, the number of rock ninjas is not too large, a complete team of 4, they surrounded the escorted Konoha ninja in a diamond shape. However, it can be seen that the few rock ninjas walking behind seemed a little nervous. Even if the Konoha ninjas they escorted looked miserable, they didn't dare to approach. On the other hand, the guy at the front didn't seem to be a guy to mess with, which made Uchiha Kaiksen feel a little bit concerned. Boo! Ha! Ha! Po Kong's voice rang immediately when the 4 Iwanin had just stepped into the ambush circle. Although the incident happened suddenly, the 4 Iwanin had clearly foreseen it. After all, this is a battlefield. Although it is close to their rear, it is definitely not a safe place. The rock ninja standing at the front should be a ninja with rich experience in actual combat. Although it is not clear if it is a joinin, he was very calm and took out the kunao and shot all the kunao. Blocked. These hardships are not just for Iwa Shinobu, they also cover these Konoha ninjas. Uchiha Kai doesn't need to think about it at all to know that this is probably Hyuga Aya's own assertion. However, Uchiha didn't blame her either. This kind of test can better observe the attitude of these rock ninjas towards the Konoha ninja behind them, although it may cause some accidental injuries. But it can also be misleading to a certain extent. If it was Uchiha Kai who did it, I am afraid Uchiha Kai would also make such a choice. Although it is cruel, it is not bad to be able to mislead the enemy and judge some things at the same time. As for the remaining 3 Iwa shinobi who looked a little nervous, although they were not injured, their formation was completely disrupted. This time, Hyuga and Kename did not give Uchiha a headache like the last time. They rushed out almost as soon as the formation spread out, and Uchiha knew that he should do it himself. It's time. With the seals of both hands, Uchiha Kai completed his ninjutsu in less than a second. Fire escape, Dragon Fire technique. Dragon Fire Jutsu is only a level ninjutsu, but in order to maximize the power of this ninjutsu, you still need some props such as some kind of bar or wire, and powerful chakra. However, Uchiha Kai doesn't care so much. Their target is only the guy who stands on guard, because only this guy feels a little dangerous to Uchiha Kai. Sure enough, the guy's attention was attracted by the person behind him, but his reaction speed was still very fast, and he jumped up in just one breath to avoid Uchiha Kai's sneak attack. However, Uchiha Kai did not expect this kind of ninjutsu to kill a ninja. As the most destructive ninjutsu, Huodun seems to be more strategic than its actual combat effect. Anyway, in the original work, Uchiha Kai has never seen a few who use fire to burn the enemy in actual combat, even if he only uses fire to clean up the scene. In other cases he uses fire to attract the attention of the enemy. Powerful. He pulled out Kunao Uchiha Kai and directly attached it with a flashing technique. His speed was very fast, but Iwanin, who had been concentrating all the time, obviously also noticed this situation. Ding! The two Kunao collided with each other, causing a slight spark, and a crisp metallic sound. So fast! Kei Uchiha sneered in his heart. The speed and strength of this Iwanan are a little scary. If he didn't attack him, he knew what would happen if he fought him hidden. But ninjas are ninjas who don't sneak attack. Yu reading www.yuuganshu.com. Uchiha Kai does not have the slightest psychological burden. However, Uchiha Kai didn't have any careless thoughts. The sneak attack was just to take the lead. How to maximize this advantage is what Uchiha Kai deserves to consider. Ding ding ding. In an instant, the two figures fought fiercely in the forest. Uchiha Chi became more and more depressed. Why was he so unlucky this time? How long after he came out, he actually met two joinin? But looking back, it seems that his luck in the past was not very good. The first team of Uchiha Kai was attacked by a Jounin and 3 Chunin. If it wasn't for his first captain's desperate protection and the fact that Uchiha himself was too dark to let him survive, there might be nothing to him. After tossing around for a few teams, Uchiha Kai survived every time, but his team basically dissipated. Uchiha sometimes feels as if he is a disaster, but he feels like he is Shishichen otherwise, it would be impossible for him to run away every time. Looking at the opponent in front of him, Uchiha knows what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are. If he doesn't turn on the riding wheel, Uchiha may not have the confidence to solve this guy. But Uchiha and Kenta Ime had already dealt with their enemies and came to support Uchiha. Uchiha knew that his odds of winning had increased. However, there is one thing that Uchiha is very clear about. These two people probably don't want to support themselves. If there are still 6 Konoha ninjas watching here, they will definitely choose to turn around and leave. Although I don't know the details of their specific cover mission, no one is willing to act as a bait, especially behind enemy lines. You are all right. After cutting the ropes on the tightly bound Konoha ninjas who were covered in bruises and wounds, Uchiha did not forget to comfort them while unraveling their illusions. That rock ninja Hunin finally fell under the siege of Uchiha Kai and the 3 of them. No matter how outstanding his strength was, it would be hard for him to face the siege of 3 ninjas with at least the title of Chunin. And these 3 guys are not fuel-efficient lamps, so after a fight, the IWA shinobi finally died in their hands. Thank you, Iwanan. After the rescued Konoha ninja thanked Uchiha Kai and the others, he didn't forget to curse those Iwanan. How is your physical condition? Uchiha Kai didn't care about this, he was more concerned about whether these ninjas could still move. It's not safe here, we have to leave here immediately, and we still have a mission. Mission? The ninja was stunned. Isn't your mission to rescue us? Rescue you guys is just a matter of convenience. We still have our own tasks. We can help if there is no conflict, and you can also help us a lot. Uchiha Kai unceremoniously broke this ninja's fantasy. Rescue them? What a joke, let's not say that Konoha can't arrange so many people now that the war is so tight. Even if Uchiha didn't see that they were of sufficient value, he wouldn't necessarily come over. War times are so cruel, all the things and feelings that seem simple in normal times will appear extravagant here. Uchiha didn't like this feeling either, but he couldn't help it in this era. The Konoha ninja was also stunned for a moment, but he soon accepted the words of Uchiha. Obviously, he is also a person who has been fighting on the battlefield. Of course, he understands Uchiha's approach. Before the White Fang incident, no one was willing to commit this taboo. As a ninja, since there is still value in being used, he is truly valuable. This Konoha ninja moved his hands and feet. Although he was a little weak, he quickly judged his situation. I'm fine. Although I'm a little weak, the other brothers should be fine. Konoha ninja looked back at the others and then really said to Uchiha Kai, he wouldn't look down on Uchiha Kai because he was a 12 or 13-year-old kid. Very good, Ayakan, please help us open the way, we will leave here immediately. Uchiha Kai nodded and then looked at the Konoha ninja. My name is Uchiha Kai, the captain of this team, the 2 of them are Uchiha and Kenta Ime, tell us about your situation. Uchiha? Hyuga. The Konoha ninja froze for a moment, then sighed and said, "My name is Masato Yamanaka, and our troops were scattered, so we were captured. Fortunately, we were not captured. It's been too long, except for being a little hungry, everything is fine." "I see." Uchiha Ki nodded, "This is good news. Ninjas who have just been captured are generally only tortured by illusion techniques, but such torture is basically impossible to ask why. So what Iwanan has to do is to them up and send them back to the rear, and then subject them to more brutal torture in order to gain information." Uchiha Chi tilted his head and looked at this guy. Obviously, this guy's name caught his attention, and he was not unfamiliar with the surname Yamanaka. And there are usually other people with the surname Yamanaka, such as Nara and Akimichi. It's just that Uchiha Chi looked around and didn't find any guys like Pineapple Head and Fat Man, so the only result is that they either died or escaped alive. Of course, this has nothing to do with Kei Uchiha. Seeing that the flames caused by the fire had slowly boiled away, Kei Uchiha turned around and left here with Masato Yamanaka waiting for the ninja. Not long after they left, several Iwanan squads appeared at their location. But unfortunately, neither Uchiha Kai nor Yamanaka Masato, they are rookies on the battlefield. Since they are going to run away, how can they leave so many traces for others to follow? They are not the guys from more than 10 years later. In one Chunin exam, it can be seen that the three generations are unpopular, and at the same time, it can be seen that the quality of Konoha Shimonin is really poor. With the help of Ayahayaga, their group of 9 avoided a lot of tracking troops, and finally found a cave to hide. There is nothing wrong with Kai Uchiha and the others, but obviously these Konoha ninjas who have just been rescued can't take it anymore. Their ability to persevere until now is entirely dependent on their strong desire to survive, and they really need to rest now before they can continue their actions. Chi-jun, can you tell us about your mission? Masato Yamanaka sat on the ground and chewed jerky that he didn't know how many days it had been sitting on. For them, it was already a delicacy in the world. Okay. Uchiha Kai nodded, because we need your help, we will save you. Now I will talk about our mission. Our mission is to contain and attract IWA Ninja's garrison, and then let Po the Wind team successfully completed the task. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com Decoy Mission. Masato Yamanaka was stunned for a moment, and then he continued to chew his meat expressionlessly. Is that so? We understand, we will cooperate with you. It couldn't be better. Uchiha Ki nodded and glanced at the atmosphere around him. He found that after he said the mission, it was obvious that the cave was a little depressed. There is no way, who asked Uchiha Kai and the others to take on the task to a certain extent, it is simply a task of courting death, but since such a task exists, it must have its necessity. Minato Namikaze and the others all know that in their opinion, Minato Namikaze's mission is also dangerous and difficult. But the good news is that these Konoha ninjas are relatively simple. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that they didn't have any refutation after hearing the mission made Kei Uchiha in a good mood. Even Masato Yamanaka is like this. Thinking about his surname and the relationship between his family and the Hokage of all dynasties, it seems that all this is not so difficult to understand. In the original book, the 3 generations of Hokage arranged the new generation of Pig Deer Butterfly in the hands of Sarutobi Asuma, thinking that it is not difficult to understand at all. Make some preparations for future generations. I am afraid that everyone will do more or less. After all, not everyone is the 2nd generation Hokage. Uchiha Kai simply chatted with them for a few words and walked out, and he still had to be on guard, in order to avoid any careless ghost leaving any traces and causing them to be discovered. What Uchiha didn't expect was that both Ime Kenta and Hyagaiya followed, and Hyagaiya was even more outspoken like Uchiha and asked a question. Have you already guessed what the Hurricane Team's mission is?